You'll notice that today we're talking about the Ark of the Covenant. And if you were listening to Nathan's sermon, he mentioned it briefly at the end. Did anyone catch that? He said basically, carry the Ark of God wherever you go. So it's a reference to the old Ark of the Covenant. Probably a better title screen for that would be this one here, The Shadows of Good Things to Come with Indiana Jones. So I first saw this movie when it came out in theaters in, I think it was 1981. And you may have heard me talk about Everett Ferguson some in the past. I went and saw this movie with his daughter, Ann, and she's probably as smart as Everett, but she would translate the movie, the German parts, the Hebrew, the Aramaic. She was translating all those parts in the movie for me. I was with another friend, so it made it more special to watch the movie then. But up to that point, when I thought of the Ark of the Covenant, I didn't think of it in relation to anything beyond the Old Testament. It was just something in the Old Testament that was not related to anything else. You know, the idea of the Ark kind of disappearing in the past, it wasn't something that I'd really thought of before. But in this study, we're going to see how the Ark was a shadow of the empty tomb. Again, here's our list of classes. We're getting towards the end. Here's the key verses for this entire study. Colossians 2, these are a shadow of the things that were to come. The reality, however, is found in Christ. Hebrews 10, the law is only a shadow of the good things that are coming, not the realities themselves. And then the shadow comes from Jesus. Jesus said, I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will never walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. So one comment I want to make about these is the old covenant was based on what man could do. The new covenant is based on what God did, and that was at the cross with Jesus. Okay, so in Exodus 25, God describes how to construct the ark. He was specific on the dimensions of the wood, the gold, the cherubim that decorated the top, and then in the next chapter, he defines how the curtain would hide the ark. So let's go ahead and read the passages from Exodus about the Ark of the Covenant. Have them make a chest of acacia wood, 2.5 cubits long, 1.5 cubits wide, and 1.5 cubits high. Overlay it with pure gold, both inside and out, and make gold molding around it. Cast 4 gold rings for it and fasten them to its 4 feet, with 2 rings on one side and 2 rings on the other. Then make poles of acacia wood and overlay them with gold. Insert the poles into the rings on the sides of the chest to carry it. The poles are to remain in the rings of the ark. They are not to be removed. Then put in the ark the testimony which I give you. That's referring to what God gave Moses on Mount Sinai. Make an atonement cover of pure gold, 2.5 cubits long and 1.5 cubits wide, and make 2 cherubim out of hammered gold at the ends of the cover. Make 1 cherub on one end and the second cherub on the other. Make the cherubim of one piece with the cover at the 2 ends. The cherubim are to have their wings spread upward, overshadowing the cover with them. The cherubim are to face each other, looking toward the cover. Place the cover on top of the ark and put the ark in the ark, the testimony which I give you. There above the cover will be 2 cherubim that are over the ark of the testimony. I will meet with you and give you all my commands for the Israelites. And then skipping down the next chapter, chapter 26, verse 31. Make a curtain of pure Make a curtain of blue, purple, and scarlet yarn, and finely twisted linen, with cherubim worked into it by a skilled craftsman. Hang it with gold hooks on the 4 posts of acacia wood overlaid with gold and standing on 4 silver bases. Hang the curtain from the clasp and place the ark of the testimony between the curtain. The curtain will separate the holy place from the most holy place. Okay, we're skipping over to Leviticus 16. In this passage, God refers to the top of the ark as the mercy seat and how Aaron was to sprinkle blood on it. This also involved burning incense. So Leviticus 16, and he shall take a censer full of coals of fire from the altar before the Lord, and 2 handfuls of sweet incense, beaten small, and he shall bring it inside the veil, and put the incense on the fire before the Lord, that the cloud of the incense may cover the mercy seat that is over the testimony, so that he does not die. And he shall take some of the blood of the bull and sprinkle it with his finger in front of the mercy seat on the east side. And in front of the mercy seat he shall sprinkle some of the blood with his finger 7 times. Then he shall kill the goat of the sin offering that is for the people, and bring its blood inside the veil, and do with its blood as he did with the blood of the bull, sprinkling it over the mercy seat and in front of the mercy seat. Thus he shall make atonement for the holy place because of the uncleanness of the people of Israel, and because of their transgressions, all their sins. And so he shall do for the tent of meeting which dwells with them in the midst of their uncleanness. And part of this we read a few weeks ago when we were talking about the scapegoat and the sacrificial goat. Okay. Also, this is what Zechariah was doing when we read about him in Luke chapter 1. Now in Numbers 4, we see God telling Moses how they were to move the ark and its curtain. When the camp is to move, Aaron and his sons are to go in and take down the shielding curtain and cover the ark of the testimony with it. They are to cover this with hides of sea cows, spread a cloth of solid blue over that, and put the poles in place. After Aaron and his sons have finished covering the holy furnishings and all the holy articles, and when the camp is ready to move, the Kohathites are to come to do the carrying, but they must not touch the holy things, or they will die. The Kohathites are to carry those things that are in the tent of meeting. So part of this was folding up the curtain and placing it on top of the ark. So let's look at some of the requirements for the Ark of the Covenant. First thing we notice is the construction of the ark. We mentioned acacia wood, the gold overlay and molding. It had the mercy seat and the cherubim. As far as the contents, you had the book of law or the testimony. There's Aaron's staff. We'll read about this in a little bit. Jar of manna and incense. And then the position within the tabernacle is supposed to be within the Holy of Holies. It was talking about being between the veil. The transportation, how to move it and who would move it, that would be the Kohathites. And that had to be carried, not put on a cart or anything like that. And then the reverence for it, to treat it as a holy object. 1 Samuel 6 refers to Eli's sons, Hophni and Phinehas, when they decided to take it into battle, and as a result they lost it. So why was God specific about not only the ark, but the tabernacle and all its contents? So you might wonder about that. You know, a lot of times God is not specific with us. But in this case, he was very specific, given the measurements, how it was to look, what objects were there. And I think the reason for it being so specific is because of what it was to represent in the future. Let's look at the curtain. In the Old Testament, when people were grieving, they would tear their clothes. This is especially true with parents when they lost a child. Genesis 37 is when Joseph's brothers told Jacob that Joseph would die, and Jacob tore his clothes. Judges 11. Oh, I forgot what happened there. That was Jephthah. When his daughter ran out to meet him, he tore his clothes because he had made an oath to sacrifice whatever came out of his house. 2 Samuel 13, that's another father. But think about fathers that tear their clothes. And now think about what happened when Jesus died. In Matthew 27, it says, when Jesus had cried out again in a loud voice, he gave up his spirit. At that moment, the curtain in the temple was torn in two from top to bottom. The earth shook and the rocks split. So I think part of that, a lot of times we say that when the curtain tore, it was to break down the barrier between the Holy of Holies and mankind. And that's true, but you could also look at it as God grieving for his son and tearing the Holy of Holies open. So we're going to see in a little bit how the curtain for the Holy of Holies points towards the tomb, but also it points backwards to the other events in the Bible. Okay, let's compare to the tomb, number 7. And as we read this, think about how it might be making a connection to the empty tomb. And if you don't see it, we'll get to it in a little bit. But just think about what the cherubim could represent. When Moses entered the tent of meeting to speak with the Lord, he heard the voice speaking to him from between the two cherubim above the atonement cover on the Ark of Testimony, and he spoke with him. Numbers 10, whenever the ark went out, Moses said, "Rise up, O Lord. May your enemies be scattered. May your foes flee before you." So think about those two verses and what they might mean. So I might be reading more into this, but I think this is a link to Jesus rising from the dead. So let's see what's inside the ark. We're not only interested with the outside, but also the contents of the ark. After Moses finished writing in a book the words of this law from beginning to end, he gave this commandment to the Levites who carried the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord. Take this book of the law and place it by the side of the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord your God. There it will remain as a witness against you. So some versions say the book of the law was placed in the side of the ark, but in the next passages, some versions use before instead of front of. So Exodus 16, as the Lord commanded Moses, Aaron put the manna in front of the testimony that it might be kept. The Lord said to Moses, "Put back Aaron's staff in front of the testimony to be kept as a sign to the rebellious. This will put an end to their grumbling against me so that they will not die." Then Exodus 30, and make a fragrant blend of incense, the work of a perfumer. It is to be salted and pure and sacred. Grind some of it to powder and place it in front of the testimony in the tent of meeting, where I will meet with you. It shall be most holy to you. So these passages give us an idea that these objects were outside the ark. They were, but in Hebrews 9:4, it says they were all inside the ark. 1 Samuel 6:19 also implies the objects were in the ark. So this makes us think they were exhibited outside the ark, but stored inside when not in use. Okay, here's some other names in the Bible for the Ark of the Covenant. You also see Ark of the Testimony, the Covenant, Ark of God's Covenant, Ark of the Lord, Ark of God, Ark of the God of Israel, Ark of the Sovereign Lord, Ark of the Lord God, Mercy Seat, and the Cherubim of Glory. So these will be in different versions, scattered in different books of the Bible. Okay, in the next passage we read of the Israelites crossing over into the Promised Land, and the ark was part of that transition along with the 12 chosen. So we'll look and see if we see any shadows in this. Joshua 3. See, the ark of the covenant of the Lord of all the earth will go into the Jordan ahead of you. Now then, choose 12 men from the tribes of Israel, one from each tribe. And as soon as the priests who carry the ark of the Lord of all the earth, set foot in the Jordan, its waters flowing downstream will be cut off and stand up in a heap. And then skipping down to verse 17, the priests who carried the ark of the covenant of the Lord stood firm on dry ground in the middle of the Jordan, while all Israel passed by until the whole nation had completed the crossing on dry ground. So here we see the people going into the Promised Land, passing through the water, and the Ark of the Covenant is there with them. The first part of the next verse should remind you of Numbers 10:35 that we read earlier. David made several messianic prophecies, and this is another one referring to the Anointed One, especially in the last verse. And David connects to the ark to Jesus in this. Psalm 132. Arise, O Lord, and come to your resting place, you and the ark of your might. May your priests be clothed with righteousness. May your saints sing for joy. For the sake of David your servant, do not reject your anointed one. The Lord swore an oath to David, a sure oath that he will not revoke. One of your own descendants I will place on your throne. So in this passage, Jesus is foretelling the disappearance of the ark from Israel. Not even Indiana Jones would be able to find it. Jeremiah 3. Return, fatherless people, declares the Lord, for I am your husband. I will choose you, one from a town and two from a clan, and bring you to Zion. Then I will give you shepherds after my own heart, who will lead you with knowledge and understanding. In those days, when your numbers have increased greatly in the land, declares the Lord, men will no longer say, the ark of the covenant of the Lord. I will never enter their minds or be remembered. It will not be missed, nor will another one be made. So this is the last mention of the ark until we get to the book of Hebrews. So after this passage came the Babylonian captivity. There's several references to the presence of the Lord. Look at the last bullet. Sometimes it refers to the ark, and that was in Beth Shemesh. But we see different levels of God's presence being made known to the people. The first bullet is sometimes it refers to the area near the tabernacle, and this is when God would speak to the people as they gathered near the tabernacle through Moses. And Nathan mentioned the cloud in a sermon today. Sometimes it refers to the tabernacle. And there's some passages referring to that. And then sometimes it refers to the temple, when the temple replaced the tabernacle. And then sometimes refers to the Holy of Holies, and that's where the Ark of the Covenant was contained. And then you see these are kind of big circles, and it gets smaller and smaller until it refers to the Ark of the Covenant. So the presence of the Lord kind of is designated in different areas at different places. We'll read the white passages here. The ark was in Shiloh, we see at the end of the Judges with Eli, and that's within the tabernacle at the beginning of 1 Samuel. Eli's sons used the ark to help defeat the Philistines, but instead the Philistines captured it, and the ark became a curse to the Philistines, and they started moving it from town to town until it was returned to the Levites in Beth Shemesh. The Levites then sent it on to Kiriath Jearim, which was Abinadab's house, where it stayed until David brought it to Jerusalem. And when David brought the ark to Jerusalem, Jerusalem became the holy city, and the tabernacle was also moved into Jerusalem. So let's look at 2 Samuel 7 and see how it played into that situation. He said to Nathan the prophet, this is David, "Here I am living in a palace of cedar while the ark of God remains in a tent." And skip to verse 4. That night the word of the Lord came to Nathan. And verse 5, this is what the Lord says, "Are you the one to build me a house to dwell in?" And then skipping down to verse 9, God tells David, "I will make your name great like the names of the greatest men on earth." And skipping down to verse 11, the Lord himself will establish a house for David, and he will raise up offspring to succeed you, who will come from your own body. And I will establish his kingdom. That's referring to Jesus. I will establish the throne of his kingdom forever. I'll be his father, and he will be my son. That's pretty obvious there. He's referring to Jesus. When he does wrong, I will punish him with the rod of men. And they're referring to the trials with floggings inflicted by men. But my love will never be taken away from him. And then in verse 16, your house and your kingdom will endure forever before me. Your throne will be established forever. So it's all kind of connected back to the Ark of the Covenant. So we see David's desire to build a temple for God. Instead, God promised to make David's name great and his descendants great, in fact, eternal. Thus, messianic prophecy starts with the ark and ends with crucifixion, yet being eternal. In John 14:9-10, we see God's presence manifested in Jesus. It is no longer in the tabernacle or in the temple, but in his Son, as prophesied to David. Here it is. Jesus answered, "Don't you know me, Philip, even after I've been among you for such a long time? Anyone who has seen me has seen the Father. How can you say, 'Show us the Father'? Don't you believe that I am in the Father and that the Father is in me?" So here we see God's presence within Jesus. And now, in Ephesians 3, we see God's presence within us. I pray that out of his glorious riches he may strengthen you with power through his Spirit in your inner being, so that Christ may dwell in your hearts through faith. And again, that kind of refers to what Nathan said in his sermon, to carry the ark of God wherever you go. So it's like we have the Ark of the Covenant within us. This is about Pompey the Great. Gaius Pompeius Magnus was a distinguished military and political leader of the late Roman Republic. In 63 BC, he established the Roman supremacy in Phoenicia, Syria, and Judea. While in Jerusalem, Pompey entered the Holy of Holies. This was only the second time that someone had dared to penetrate into this sacred spot. This is taken from New World Encyclopedia, so it's not referring to the priest. He went to the temple to satisfy his curiosity about stories he had heard about the worship of the Jewish people. He made it a priority to find out whether the Jews had no physical statue or image of their God in their most sacred place of worship. To Pompey, it was inconceivable to worship a God without portraying him as a type of physical likeness, like a statue. What Pompey saw was unlike anything he had seen in his travels. He found no physical statue, religious image, or pictorial description of the Hebrew God. Instead, he saw the Torah scrolls and was thoroughly confused. So in this writing, what it's saying is that he did not see an Ark of the Covenant in the Holy of Holies. He went to where no Gentile should go, and within the Holy of Holies, that's where they kept the Ark of the Covenant. But in 63 BC, he saw nothing there. We read earlier, it was covered in gold and had the cherubim on top. So that would fit the golden image that he would have been expecting to see, but he saw nothing there. There is talk about the Ark of the Covenant hidden at the beginning of the Babylonian captivity. We just don't know where it went. According to movies, it's in some warehouse in Washington, D.C., I guess. Speaking of the cherubim, what are they besides being decorations on the ark? We do see them in real life in the Old Testament. Genesis 3, after he drove man out, Adam and Eve, God placed on the east side of the Garden of Eden cherubim and a flaming sword flashing back and forth to guard the way to the tree of life. So the cherubim blocked men from the tree of life and from God, but with the ark in Exodus 25:22, it says God will meet with Moses between the cherubim. So the cherubim which once separated God from man is now going to be the meeting place for God and man, and we will see that in the tomb as well. Ezekiel 10, verse 8 says, under the wings of the cherubim could be seen what looked like the hands of a man. Skipping to verse 14, each of the cherubim had 4 faces. One man was that of a cherub, the second man of a man, the third the face of a lion, and the fourth the face of an eagle. And I'm from a programming background, so I would say this would be a recursive definition, because it talks about the cherub having a face of a cherub. So it's, I don't really know how to describe that. But the Hebrew word for cherubim is cherubim, and it means those grasped, held fast, or seized. And Dutch did a series a while back on angels, whether they have wings or not. We do see that cherubim do have wings. If cherubim are angels or not, that could be debatable, but we'll use them. We will say that they are in the same category as angels for this class. So we do see cherubim depicted in our culture as chubby, naked babies with wings, especially around Valentine's Day. But that's not what I imagine looking at Genesis 3. It looks like something kind of like Chuck Norris, I guess. So Hebrews 9, we already make a reference to this, but For this study, we're going to look at the whole passage. The Hebrew writer refers to the most holy place when the ark was in the tabernacle. He quickly describes the ark and its contents, and then makes a comment. Now, the first covenant had regulations for worship and also an earthly sanctuary. The tabernacle was set up. In its first room, there was the lampstand, the table, and the consecrated bread. This is called the holy place. Behind the second curtain was a room called the most holy place, which had the golden altar of incense and the gold-covered Ark of the Covenant. The ark contained the gold jar of manna, Aaron's staff that had budded, and the gold tablets of the covenant. Above the ark were the cherubim of the glory, overshadowing the atonement cover. But we cannot discuss these things in detail now. When everything had been arranged like this, the priest entered regularly into the outer room to carry on their ministry, but only the high priest entered the inner room, and that only once a year, and never without blood, which he offered for himself and for the sins of the people had committed in ignorance. The Holy Spirit was showing this, that the way into the most holy place had not yet been disclosed as long as the first tabernacle was still standing. This is an illustration for the present time, indicating that the gifts and sacrifices being offered were not able to clear the conscience of the worshiper. When Christ came as high priest of the good things that are already here, he went through the greater and more perfect tabernacle that is not man-made, that is to say, not part of this creation. He did not enter by means of bloods of goats and calves, but he entered the most holy place once for all by his own blood, having obtained eternal redemption. The blood of goats and bulls and the ashes of the heifer sprinkled on those who are ceremonially unclean, sanctify them so that they are outwardly clean. How much more then will the blood of Christ, who through the eternal Spirit offer himself unblemished to God, cleanse our consciences from the acts that lead to death, and that we may serve the living God? For this reason, Christ is the mediator of a new covenant, that those who are called may receive the promised eternal inheritance, now that he has died as a ransom to set them free from the sins committed under the first covenant. In the case of a will, it is necessary to prove the death of one who made it, because a will is in force only when someone has died. It never takes effect while the one who made it is living. This is why even the first covenant was not put to effect without blood. So the writer of Hebrews identifies Jesus as the true high priest who went through the greater and more perfect tabernacle. The Hebrew writer tells us that this is all a shadow of Jesus' sacrifice, even the ark of the covenant gone, and this is the new covenant. So there we can see that the Hebrew writer is pointing at the old tabernacle, especially the Ark of the Covenant, as a shadow of Jesus. So for the mercy seat, we have seen that the top of the ark is also called the mercy seat. That's where the cherubim are. In the passage we just studied, used it in describing the ark. Hebrews 9:5 says, above it were the cherubim of glory overshadowing the mercy seat. Of these things we cannot speak in detail. So according to Young's Analytical Concordance, the Greek word for mercy seat, hilasterium, means a place of propitiation or appeasement. It occurs 2 times in the New Testament. Once it's translated as mercy seat, as you see there in Hebrews 9, and the other as propitiation. This is the other place. For all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God, and they are justified for his grace as a gift, though through the redemption that is in Christ Jesus, whom God put forward as propitiation by his blood, to be received by faith. This was to show God's righteousness, because in his divine forbearance he had passed over former sins. So in these two passages, we see that mercy seat equals the sacrifice of Jesus. Okay, the empty tomb. Joseph of Arimathea and Nicodemus got permission to put Jesus' crucified body in the tomb. This is where we read about it in John 19. Later, Joseph of Arimathea asked Pilate for the body of Jesus. Now, Joseph was a disciple of Jesus, but secretly, because he feared the Jews, with Pilate's permission, he came and took the body away. He was accompanied by Nicodemus, the man who earlier had visited Jesus at night. Nicodemus brought a mixture of myrrh and aloes, along with about 75 pounds. Taking Jesus' body, the two of them wrapped it with the spices in strips of linen, and this was in accordance with the Jewish burial customs. So in the next chapter, we see what happened a few days later. Mary stood outside the tomb crying. As she wept, she bent over to look into the tomb and saw two angels in white seated where Jesus' body had been, one at the head and one at the foot. And you can see the underlined areas that should trigger something in your mind. They asked her, "Woman, why are you crying?" "They have taken my Lord away," she said, "and I don't know where they have put him." At this, she turned around and saw Jesus standing there, but she did not realize it was Jesus. "Woman," he said, "why are you crying? Who is it you are looking for?" Thinking he was a gardener, she said, "Sir, if you have carried him away, please tell me where you have put him, and I will get him." Jesus said to her, "Mary." She turned toward him and cried out in Aramaic, "Rabboni," which means teacher. So going back to Indiana Jones, sometimes you have to study to find a deeper meaning. Sometimes there's a clue hidden in plain sight and you don't realize it. Does anyone see anything unusual in this? It's R2-D2 and C3PO. So George Lucas was paying homage to an earlier movie. But a lot of times things are in plain sight and you just never notice. So let's look at a comparison of the Ark of the Covenant and the empty tomb. We see the two cherubim in the mercy seat, whereas we see two angels sitting where Jesus was laid. And it even mentioned that they were at the two ends. The Ark of the Covenant was overlaid with gold. It had a gold embellishment. We see the tomb belonging to Joseph of Arimathea. He was a rich man. Inside the ark was a jar of manna. Jesus said, "I am the bread of life." And in John 6, he talks about how he is greater than manna. Aaron's budded rod was in there. The Hebrew for almonds means waken. And Jesus was the resurrection. There was also fragrant spices and incense in there. And Jesus' body was prepared with spices. We see the stone tablets, the old covenant, and Christ is the mediator of the new covenant. We see the blood of animal sacrifices that were sprinkled on it by the high priest. Jesus, his blood was stained on the cloth that was covering him, and probably blood was on the burial place as well. We see the linen curtain laid on top of it, of the ark, and Jesus' body was wrapped in linen. Also, it was folded up as well. The Israelites went through the Jordan with the ark, and we in baptism share in the death, burial, and resurrection, according to Romans chapter 6. So here I think you can see how the empty tomb was kind of a shadow of things to come. So I'll just show you a bunch of the questions that we were going to cover, but we don't have time for it. So